Astronomers were shocked to discover that on the far side of the moon, 380,000 kilometers from Earth, there was a string of dense, disordered electromagnetic signals. They were coming from the moon. At first, scientists thought it was a device malfunction. But as the signal strength increased, the surface of the moon began to vibrate violently. The traces of humans landing on the moon were erased in an instant. Then a suffocating, gigantic shadow completely covered the moon, gradually approaching the Earth. The Ministry of Defense, upon receiving the news, immediately analyzed the image. They determined that the unknown object had reached an astounding 550 kilometers in diameter. Its mass was close to 1/4 that of the moon. The general thought it was probably a giant meteorite. But the technicians didn't think so. To everyone's surprise, the craft was slowing down. Just when everyone was confused, the unknown object reached Earth's orbit. The satellite that humans had been so proud of was like a speck of dust in front of it. However, the strange thing was that the object didn't head straight for Earth, but stopped in position at Earth's orbit. Then, like cell division, it released a smaller disk about 15 kilometers in diameter. The disks were expected to enter the atmosphere within the next 25 minutes. At this point, all the detection equipment on Earth had gone out of order. The White House had received a large number of reports about the spacecraft. But they were still hiding the truth, holding a press conference to comfort the public. At the same time, the equipment on the TVs was also disrupted. The engineer David was called in for emergency repairs. However, while inspecting the equipment, he accidentally found a mysterious cyclic signal hidden in the satellite communication code. But at that moment, what everyone was most concerned about was the news on TV. After learning that the satellites had been invaded, everyone began to pack up and prepare to look for refuge. As expected, not long after, terrifying phenomena appeared all over the world. When these flying objects passed through the atmosphere and entered Earth's orbit, under the friction of their high speed, the atmosphere formed a huge blaze of cloud. Then, a precise whirlpool appeared above the core cities of every country in the world. The huge shadow enveloped each entire city in an instant. The president watched one of the spacecraft, and the whirlpool appeared above the White House. So he immediately held a press conference, so that the people of the country wouldn't panic and would stay home. However, in the face of the never-before-seen giant, panic had already spread through the crowd. People began to pack up and prepare to flee the city. However, when the engineer David saw the spacecraft, he realized that the signal he had just found was not a communication protocol, but a constant countdown. The function of this signal was to synchronize all the spacecraft in the world. David knew the situation was serious, and he had to convey this news to the White House as soon as possible. With the help of former Secretary of State Connie, David soon got to meet the president. He directly pointed out that the reason the aliens weren't attacking was to wait for the countdown to end and then strike the Earth all at once. Now there wasn't much time left for humanity. At first, the military and the government still held a faint illusion that the visitors had peaceful purposes. Under the president's authorization, the military sent 3 stealth helicopters equipped with soft lights, trying to communicate with the aliens in some way. However, the alien civilization gave no response to this. Instead, there came a dazzling laser. This ruthless laser not only crushed the helicopters, but completely shattered humanity's last illusion of peace. A devastating disaster was officially raising its curtain. The current situation was fully in line with David's earlier judgment. They were not visitors, but hunters. The president immediately issued a national emergency evacuation order, but there was no time left. As the countdown came to an end, all the purple ships hovering in the sky simultaneously fired a blue high-energy pulse beam toward the cities covered below. This beam didn't have a conventional explosion effect. It was a super high-temperature impact accompanied by powerful energy, capable of instantly dissolving all materials, such as steel. In the footage, the finest urban civilization in human history was turned to dust in just a few seconds. The survivors were very few. Most of them stayed in the underground tunnels. The next day, the president immediately ordered the troops to launch a counterattack. Under the leadership of ace pilot Steve, the battle formation took off at once to engage the enemy. When they approached the alien spaceship, the group of aircraft fired a dense barrage of missiles without hesitation, enough to make anyone think it was the end. All the attacks were easily blocked by the ship's energy shield. At first glance, a fighter was about to crash into the shield. Steve quickly commanded the squadron to climb and avoid it, but one of the fighters reacted slowly and hit the shield directly. There was an explosion on the spot. Unexpectedly, this action alerted the alien spaceship. A large number of alien battleships rushed out of it. The formation that was about to retreat was surrounded on all sides. A fierce air battle was about to begin. But when the US military tried to counterattack, they found that the enemy ships also had energy shields. All the firepower had no effect. The situation turned into a one-sided slaughter of the US military. The president hurried to order all troops to retreat, but it was too late. In just a few minutes, almost the entire force was wiped out. Only Steve was still fighting alone. At this critical moment, the aliens located the US Air Force base through the intercepted signal from the ships. Faced with the frenzied assault of the alien battleships, the base's defenses soon collapsed completely. Fortunately, Steve managed to lure an enemy ship into a canyon. Relying on the complex terrain and favorable conditions, he succeeded in bringing down the enemy ship. In that barren desert, Steve escaped before the ship was destroyed. But when he saw the sacrifice of so many comrades, he was filled with rage. Without even thinking, he smashed open the hatch of the destroyed alien ship. Seeing the alien creature crawl out of it, Steve rushed up and punched it. Then he dragged the alien across the desert using a parachute. Along the way, he happened to meet a retreating fleet, so he caught a ride back to the secret military base. And this is the secret base where the US researches alien civilization, the famous Area 51, long the subject of rumors. At that moment, the president and senior military officials had already gathered there. When they saw all kinds of mysterious objects in the base, even the president was shocked. It turned out that 40 years earlier, they had secretly acquired an alien flying craft. But after 40 years of research and exploration, scientists still couldn't crack its core technology. They had studied for 40 years without any progress, because they had locked themselves in an ivory tower. If it weren't for this disaster, which forced everyone to share information, humanity might never have known what the enemy looked like. Just when everyone was at a loss, Steve rushed back with a live alien biological sample. The excited research team immediately began the dissection, hoping for a breakthrough discovery. A sudden movement startled everyone. Fortunately, it was just a false alarm. After they continued the dissection, the alien's true appearance was slowly revealed. At that moment, the alien's finger suddenly twitched slightly. The scientists, fully focused on their research, didn't notice the crisis at all. They just saw the alien fiercely open its eyes and stare at the doctor beside it. The moment the doctor turned his head and looked at it, he felt a mental impact on his brain. The alien slowly straightened up and began to attack the people in the lab. When the senior military officials arrived at the scene, the entire lab was completely engulfed in smoke. The president cautiously approached to check the situation. An officer wanted to save the doctor, but was stopped by the general. They didn't realize until they saw the wrinkle on the doctor's neck that he had been controlled by an alien. As the smoke slowly dispersed, the alien's true appearance was finally revealed. The president seized the opportunity to try to communicate with the alien. As soon as the smoke disappeared, the alien launched a mental attack. The president immediately clutched his head in great pain. The general noticed something was wrong and immediately ordered everyone to fire. After this mental confrontation, the president accidentally sensed the alien's true purpose. Afterward, the officer drew his gun and fired several times, until it was confirmed that the alien was completely lifeless. The president finally decided to use nuclear weapons to counterattack. With a B-2 bomber carrying a nuclear bomb, he launched the strike. As soon as the pilot received the order, he immediately fired the nuclear bomb. The bomb hit the target precisely. Just when everyone was cheering, news came that left everyone in despair. The alien spaceship was in perfect condition. In the face of such power, humanity seemed to have no way out. Feelings of despair enveloped everyone. David turned to alcohol all day long to numb himself. Overwhelmed with helplessness, he kept blaming himself for doing nothing. Until, after listening to his father's words, he suddenly understood what needed to be done. It was a flash of genius. David was struck with inspiration, to use a virus to break through the defense. He immediately gathered all the researchers present. In front of everyone, he placed a small can on the wrecked alien spaceship. He challenged the officer to hit that soda can sitting on top of the alien craft with a shot. The officer pulled the trigger and fired the first bullet. The bullet was deflected directly by the outer protective barrier. Everyone present was shocked. After David inserted the programmed virus into the device, the officer pulled the trigger again. The bullet fired this time hit the can successfully. The alien's outer protective barrier failed completely. David's plan had worked. The nuclear bomb represents violent thinking, and the virus represents ingenious thinking. Even the weaker side has a chance to turn things around, as long as they find the flaw in the opponent's rules. This was David's complete plan, to send a special virus, through the signal, to the alien mothership. This was a viable route for the human camp to launch a counterattack. But the alien mothership remained in the distant orbit of space. 2 brave people had to be selected to pilot the alien craft into the enemy mothership and secretly complete the implantation of the virus program. Even if it were successfully completed, it could only temporarily eliminate the protective barrier of the alien ships. But this was humanity's only chance for survival. To ensure there would be no mistakes in this infiltration mission, David and Steve volunteered to take on this extremely high-risk task. The two rushed toward the mothership, hurrying to pilot the alien craft.